My officer wife asked me to raise her ex-husband's baby. The first time my wife asked me to raise another man's child, she didn't do it in private. She didn't come to me in tears or with guilt written across her face. She asked me at my own dining table, right in front of her parents, her younger brother, and the man who had once served beside her in the military. That man was also her ex-husband. His name was Ryan Maddox. My name is Daniel Hayes, and I had been married to Major Amelia Hayes for 6 years. For 6 years, my life had revolved around early morning alarms, polished boots by the front door, midnight phone calls from the base, sudden transfer orders, missed anniversaries, and dinners reheated so many times that the pasta barely resembled food anymore. For 6 years, I kept telling myself that loving a soldier meant accepting long absences. I convinced myself that Amelia's coldness came from stress, that her impatience was the pressure of command, and that her silence was simply exhaustion. Little by little, I turned excuses into the language of our marriage. That illusion ended over a dinner of roasted chicken, red wine, and a lemon cake her mother had brought, as though we were celebrating something. The entire evening felt strangely rehearsed, like everyone at the table already knew how it would end except me. Her father, retired Colonel Harold Bennett, sat at the head of the table even though we were in my house. He kept clearing his throat, folding his napkin into neat squares, unfolding it, then folding it again. Her mother, Marlene, watched me with that soft, sympathetic look people give someone they believe is about to lose everything. Amelia's younger brother, Lucas, leaned back in his chair, scrolling through his phone with a smug grin, as if he had been invited to watch a public execution. Across from me sat Ryan Maddox. He was wearing my old gray Academy sweatshirt. That was the moment something inside me went completely quiet. It wasn't Amelia refusing to meet my eyes. It wasn't the way her hand kept resting on her stomach. It wasn't even the fact that Ryan was drinking wine from the anniversary glasses I had bought for Amelia and me on our 5th wedding anniversary. It was the sweatshirt, my sweatshirt, the one I always kept hanging by the mudroom door for cold mornings when I walked the dog before work. The gray fabric had worn cuffs and a small ink stain near the left pocket from tax season years ago. Ryan sat comfortably in my chair, wearing my clothes, eating in my home, and looking at my wife with a familiarity that made the room feel unsteady. Amelia sat beside me wearing a dark green sweater instead of her military uniform. Even out of uniform, she still carried herself like a commanding officer. Her back was perfectly straight, her voice calm and controlled, and every emotion carefully locked away. She rested one hand on her stomach and finally spoke. "Daniel, we need to have an adult conversation." I looked down at my fork resting on the edge of my plate. I had cooked the entire meal myself because Amelia said her parents were coming over and she was too tired to help. I made the potatoes exactly the way Harold liked them. I opened the wine Marlene always preferred. I even bought the lemon cake because Marlene never liked the ones I baked, always saying they were too dense. Now every one of them was staring at me as if the dinner had been nothing more than bait. Marlene reached over and gently touched Amelia's wrist. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "just tell him." Then she looked at me. "Daniel is a reasonable man." Reasonable. That word had followed me throughout my marriage like a leash. Be reasonable when Amelia missed my mother's surgery because her unit had a readiness review. Be reasonable when Lucas needed me to co-sign a loan for a truck he couldn't afford. Be reasonable when Harold and Marlene needed help paying the property taxes on the house they refused to sell. Be reasonable when Amelia spent late nights checking on Ryan because he was struggling after leaving active duty. Be reasonable when she forgot my birthday dinner but somehow remembered the anniversary of Ryan's combat injury. I eventually realized that being reasonable had never meant being treated fairly. It meant staying quiet. I looked at Amelia's hand resting on her stomach. Then I looked at Ryan. He casually lifted his wine glass, almost like he was toasting the moment everyone else had been waiting for. "Say it," I told Amelia. She swallowed hard. "I'm pregnant." Nobody at the table reacted like they had just heard shocking news. Instead, they reacted like actors waiting for the next line in a script. I nodded once. "And Ryan is here because..." I began. Amelia's eyes filled with tears, but behind them wasn't shame or fear. It was frustration. Frustration that I wasn't making this easier for her. Because he's involved, she finally admitted. Harold quietly muttered, "Family isn't always simple." Lucas let out a small laugh under his breath. Ryan gently placed his wine glass on the table, looked directly at me and said, "Life happens, Daniel." I slipped my hand into my pocket beneath the table. My phone was already unlocked because I had been checking the roast timer a few minutes earlier. Without looking down, I opened the voice recorder app and quietly hit the record button. Then I placed the phone face down beside my plate. Amelia noticed. "Daniel," she said softly, "please don't make this hostile." I looked straight at her. "You brought your ex-husband into my house wearing my sweatshirt while you're still wearing my wedding ring." This became hostile long before I said a single word. Marlene's expression tightened. "This isn't the time for pride." "No," I replied. "This is exactly the time for it." Ryan leaned forward. "I didn't come here to insult you." I glanced at his sweatshirt. "You picked a strange outfit to show respect." The smile on his face faded. Amelia finally turned fully toward me. Her eyes glistened as she took a slow breath. "The baby is Ryan's." There it was. 6 years of marriage shattered by one simple sentence. I didn't yell. I didn't throw my wine glass. If you're enjoying our stories, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to us and helps us create more amazing content for you. We're on a mission to reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and every single subscription brings us one step closer. Thank you for being part of our journey. I didn't get up and punch Ryan, even though I noticed every detail around me, the distance between our chairs, the knife beside my plate, and the way Harold's hand drifted toward his own glass as if he expected violence and was already preparing to blame me for it. Instead, I sat perfectly still. For a few seconds, the only sound I heard was the quiet hum of the refrigerator. My mind wandered through everything I had done for this family. The mortgage payment that came out of my account every month. The health insurance I paid for because Amelia's military coverage never fully covered what she claimed it did. The savings I had spent helping her parents after Harold's retirement investments lost value. The thousands of dollars I had poured into Lucas's failed business ventures. Then I remembered every night Amelia came home distant and cold, and every time I convinced myself she was simply overwhelmed. I remembered seeing Ryan's name appear on her phone over and over again, and choosing not to ask questions because I believed trust meant refusing to turn love into an interrogation. Then it finally became clear. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had invited that betrayal into my home, seated it across my table, and expected me to help take care of it. "I will not raise another man's child because you're afraid to live with the consequences of your own choices," I said. Amelia flinched. Marlene gasped. Harold's face hardened. "That's a cruel thing to say to a pregnant woman." I met his eyes. "No. Cruel was planning this dinner." Ryan tapped a finger against his wine glass. "Nobody's asking you to pretend nothing happened." I turned toward him. "Then what exactly are you asking me to pretend?" His jaw tightened. "The baby needs stability." I looked back at Amelia. She gently grabbed the sleeve of my shirt. "Ryan isn't in a position to handle this alone," she said. "He's trying to rebuild his life after everything that's happened. You and I have a home. We have stability. We have insurance. We can give this baby a safe beginning." "We," I repeated. Her grip tightened. "You always said you wanted a family." "I wanted our family." She shook her head. "Blood isn't the only thing that matters." "No," I replied quietly. "But betrayal matters a lot." Lucas dropped his phone onto the table. "Come on, man. Plenty of husbands raise children that aren't biologically theirs." "Plenty of husbands choose to," I answered. "I wasn't given a choice. I was ambushed." Marlene's eyes filled with angry tears. "My daughter made a mistake. Marriage is supposed to include mercy." I looked at her. Forgetting to turn off the stove is a mistake. This was months of deliberate choices. For the first time that night, Amelia's expression changed. The softness disappeared. "You think you're perfect? No. Then stop acting like a martyr." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she truly believed refusing to accept humiliation was the same thing as playing the victim. Ryan casually took another sip from the wine glass I had bought for my anniversary. Maybe stop embarrassing everyone, Daniel. Be mature. There it was. The message hidden beneath every calm voice at that table. Be mature. Stay calm. Keep paying the bills. Keep being useful. Give up your bedroom. Accept the other man as part of your family. Let your wife call betrayal complicated, instead of what it really was. Raise another man's child so everyone else could pretend this was generous, modern, and emotionally enlightened. I picked up my phone and stopped the recording. Then I stood. Amelia looked up immediately. Where are you going? To do the mature thing. Marlene let out a relieved sigh. Good. Take a walk around the block. Calm yourself down. I looked at her. No. I'm ending this performance. I opened my banking app. My hands were completely steady, which surprised even me. I opened our joint household account. I reduced the daily transfer limit. Then I froze the secondary authorized debit card ending in 8821 and canceled it. I had added that card 8 months earlier because Amelia told me she needed extra flexibility to help support her family while I was buried in audit season. I had noticed the charges before. Men's boots, late-night rideshares, purchases from a military surplus store 3 counties away. I had questioned them more than once, but every time I chose trust over suspicion. I wanted to believe my wife more than I wanted to examine a bank statement. Not anymore. I opened the list of scheduled automatic payments. Harold and Marlene Bennett mortgage assistance, scheduled for tomorrow. I canceled it. Amelia shot to her feet so quickly that her chair scraped loudly across the floor. Daniel. What are you doing? Protecting myself. Her phone buzzed first. Then Marlene's. Then Harold's. Marlene stared at her screen. What is this? The mortgage payment you were expecting tomorrow isn't coming from me. Harold pushed himself halfway out of his chair. You can't just stop that. I can, I replied calmly. And I just did. The color drained from Amelia's face. That payment keeps them current. Then the father of your child can help. Ryan's eyebrows lifted. Hey, this isn't about me. For the first time that evening, I smiled. It's entirely about you. Lucas pointed an accusing finger at me. You're punishing her whole family because your pride got hurt. I shook my head. No, I'm simply done paying to support my own replacement. Amelia walked around the table with both hands raised carefully, as if she were approaching a frightened animal. Daniel, please stop. We can set boundaries. We can go to counseling. We can figure out what the baby calls you. It doesn't have to be Dad right away. The room suddenly felt like it was spinning. Not because her words shocked me, because she had already imagined this future. She had already decided what role I would play in her lie. I stepped back before she could touch me. Don't come any closer. She froze. Slowly, I slipped my wedding ring off my finger. I had worn that simple band for 6 years. Through hospital visits, long audit seasons, late-night grocery runs, military ceremonies, and countless quiet dinners eaten alone while Amelia was away on duty. I laid the ring beside my untouched plate. The soft sound of metal touching ceramic was barely audible, yet it silenced the entire room. Amelia whispered, "Please, don't do this." I looked at her. You already did. I turned toward the hallway. Behind me, Ryan called out in a smooth, almost mocking voice. Come on, Daniel. We all know she'll come around. You're the safe one. I stopped at the front door. That single sentence revealed everything. It was exactly how they all saw me. Safe, reliable, easy to use. The man who always cleaned up everyone else's mess. I turned back and looked Ryan straight in the eyes. Safe doesn't mean stupid. The smile disappeared from his face. Without another word, I walked out of the house I had bought before we were ever married. I climbed into my truck and pulled away. Then I called the divorce attorney whose number had been sitting in my contacts for 3 months. I had hoped I would never need it. Her name was Rebecca Lane. She answered on the 5th ring. Mr. Hayes, she said. I was wondering when you'd call. You were right, I said as I drove away from the curb. I want to file tonight. All right. There was a brief pause before her tone became more serious. Are you safe? Yes. Do you have evidence? I have a recording. More financial records are coming. Good. Don't threaten anyone. Don't empty any shared accounts beyond what's necessary to protect yourself. Don't go back to the house alone. I won't. And send me everything. I've already started. Just then, a bank notification appeared across my phone. External transfer completed. I glanced at it. The amount made my stomach tighten. $52,000. Recipient: Ryan Maddox. Initiated by Amelia Hayes. 6 weeks earlier. I pulled into an empty pharmacy parking lot and stared at the screen until the numbers finally came into focus. $52,000. From our reserve account. To the man who had shown up wearing my sweatshirt and expected me to help raise his child. Rebecca was still on the line. Mr. Hayes. I took a slow breath. My wife transferred $52,000 to Ryan Maddox 6 weeks ago. Is it documented? Yes. Take screenshots. I already did. Good, she replied. That's where we begin. I looked at my reflection in the dark windshield. 6 years of marriage had ended around a dinner table. The fight to uncover the truth had only just begun. That night I slept at my office. Actually, slept isn't the right word. I spent the night lying awake on the old leather couch beneath a rough blanket, staring at the ceiling while the city lights flickered outside. My office sat above a small dental clinic downtown. It was freezing in winter and unbearably hot in summer. 2 filing cabinets, a coffee machine, shelves packed with tax codes, forensic accounting manuals, and corporate compliance binders. I'd slept there during audit season. I'd slept there once during a snowstorm, but never because my military officer wife had asked me to raise her ex-husband's baby. At exactly 5:12 the next morning, Amelia called. Again. It was the 34th call. I watched my phone light up, buzz, go dark, then light up all over again. When the calls finally stopped, the messages started arriving. Daniel, you're scaring me. This is financial abuse. My parents are panicking. The last message sat in my hand like something rotten. Ryan says you're acting unstable. That was the problem. Ryan had somehow earned a voice inside my marriage. A voice big enough to judge me, diagnose me, and tell my wife who I was. I forwarded every message to Rebecca. Then I opened my laptop. Numbers had always made more sense to me than people. People could lie while looking you straight in the eye. Numbers only lied when someone forced them to. And when numbers were manipulated, they always left a trail. The reserve account had existed long before I got married. I started it after leaving my job at a regional accounting firm to build my own forensic accounting practice. It was my emergency fund, meant for unexpected expenses, business setbacks, repairs, medical bills, and taxes. After Amelia and I married, I added her as a limited user. She hated having to ask me before making large household purchases. It makes me feel like a cadet, she told me. I believed her, so I gave her access. By sunrise, I had downloaded 3 years of account statements. The first payment to Ryan wasn't large. $2,200. Description: tactical consulting. Then came another. $1,850. Then $9,400. After that, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Hotel charges, late-night rideshares, a luxury watch, a firearms range membership, training equipment, a rehabilitation retreat, 3 restaurant bills, all within walking distance of the same hotel. Then, 6 weeks earlier, the $52,000 transfer. I totaled everything. Direct payments to Ryan Maddox, $194,700. Additional suspicious expenses connected to him, $136,410. Then I looked at another category. Over 4 years, I had sent $139,000 to support Amelia's parents. That didn't even include the property tax penalties, medical copays, Or the emergency roof repair Harold had promised to repay once his pension adjustment came through. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. I hadn't been blind. Blind would have been easier. I had simply trusted. There's nothing more profitable to a dishonest person than an honest person who refuses to become suspicious. At 7:30 that morning, I called the bank. By 8:20, Amelia's access to the reserve account was gone. At 8:45, I called my insurance broker and removed Ryan's truck from my discounted multi-vehicle policy. Amelia had convinced me to add it months earlier. "He's basically family from the unit," she'd said. Unit family. I hated that phrase now. At 9:05, I confirmed ownership of the black SUV Amelia drove. Mine. I had purchased it. It was registered in my name. Amelia was only an authorized driver. Nothing more. At 9:40, I sent the entire folder of financial records to Rebecca. Her reply came within minutes. "Don't meet her alone today." Unfortunately, at 10:17, Amelia ignored that advice for both of us. She walked into my office without knocking. She was wearing dark sunglasses, a cream-colored coat, and the same expression she always wore when a hotel misplaced her reservation. "You froze my card." I looked up from my laptop. "Good morning." "Don't good morning me." She shut the office door behind her. My mother called me crying. Their mortgage payment was rejected. "It wasn't rejected," I said calmly. "It was canceled." "That's cruel." I met her eyes. "No. Cruel is asking your husband to financially support the man who got you pregnant." She slowly removed her sunglasses. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but her makeup was flawless. "Do you have to say it like that?" "I'm saying it exactly as it happened. You just want to punish me. I want to stop paying for people who hurt me." She looked around my office. She had never liked this place. It was too practical, too simple, too much like the version of me she once admired before deciding she'd outgrown it. "You're making this much uglier than it needs to be." It was already ugly. "It's a baby, Daniel. It's Ryan's baby." Her hand rested gently on her stomach. "A child shouldn't suffer because adults made mistakes." "I agree. That's exactly why the child's father should take responsibility." She let out a short, bitter laugh. "You know Ryan isn't ready. Then Ryan should have made different choices." Her expression hardened. "That's rich." "Excuse me? You really think you never made me lonely? You think paying bills and keeping the house clean was enough? You think stability is the same thing as love?" There it was, the rewritten version of our marriage. If she could turn my reliability into neglect, then her affair could become a reaction instead of a choice. I shook my head. "No. But I do know sleeping with your ex-husband doesn't create love either." Color rushed into her face. "You went through my accounts." "Our accounts," I corrected, "funded with my money. You had no right." "I had every right." She stepped closer to my desk. "Ryan said you'd do this." I looked at her. "He said once your pride got hurt, you'd become cold and controlling." He got the cold part right. "Daniel." Without saying another word, I turned my laptop toward her. The spreadsheet filled the screen between us like a witness taking the stand. Dates, amounts, vendors, transfers, descriptions. Amelia stopped talking. I pointed to the totals. $194,700 in direct payments. $136,410 in related expenses. And $52,000 transferred to Ryan 6 weeks ago. "Explain." Amelia's eyes scanned the spreadsheet. "Some of that money was for his recovery." "He isn't your dependent. He was my teammate. He was your ex-husband. He almost died overseas." "So did a lot of people," I replied. "None of them ended up wearing my sweatshirt." Her lips pressed into a thin line. I clicked on another tab in the spreadsheet. Hotel downtown. 3 nights. Dinner for 2. Spa charges. Parking. Room service. I looked at her. "Would you like to explain how that fits into his recovery too?" "Stop." "No. Stop humiliating me. You humiliated me the moment you brought him into my house." I was trying to be honest. No, you were trying to control the damage. Her eyes flashed with anger. Fine, I handled it badly, but punishing my parents isn't fair. Your parents have their own mortgage. You promised to help. I promised because I believed I was helping family. They are your family. I shook my head. No, they're your parents. The words hit her like she'd never heard them before. For years, Amelia had treated family as a one-way street. Her needs always had direct access to my wallet. My time, my money, my patience. Whenever it came to me, there were always conditions. My lawyer will send you the temporary terms, I said. Until then, live on your own salary. Ask Ryan. Ask your parents. But you can't keep using me. Her eyes narrowed. You actually hired a lawyer? I already completed the intake. You're just angry. No. I'm thinking clearly. She gripped the edge of my desk. I'm pregnant. I know. And you're abandoning me. I looked at her calmly. No. I'm refusing to accept a role in a life you created behind my back. She shook her head. You always make everything sound so simple. Marriage is messy. I gave a small nod. Messy is leaving laundry in the washing machine. This is fraud wrapped in maternity clothes. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out an envelope I had prepared earlier that morning. She watched as I placed it in front of her. What's that? A notice requiring you to return the SUV by Friday at 5 o'clock. Her face immediately lost its color. You're taking my car? My car. I need it for duty travel. Then use Ryan's truck. It barely runs. Then maybe he'll have more motivation to rebuild his life. She slammed her hand onto my desk. You're being vindictive. I'm being accurate. You can't strip away my entire life overnight. I'm only stripping away my financial support. Her phone buzzed. She glanced down at the screen and slowly closed her eyes. My mom says the bank called again. Then your mom can call Ryan. She looked back at me. Why do you keep saying his name like that? Because you keep talking about him like he's some tragic victim instead of a grown man who made his own choices. Her jaw trembled. He was my first love. I held her gaze. I was your husband. Silence settled over the office. For just a moment, I didn't see Major Amelia Hayes. I didn't see the disciplined officer. I didn't see the daughter who had spent years turning her parents' demands into my responsibilities. I didn't even see the woman who had sat across from me and asked me to treat betrayal like another marital duty. I simply saw Amelia, scared, cornered, and still thinking about herself first. Daniel, she whispered, I don't know how to do this without you. For a moment, the old part of me almost answered. Almost. Then my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Amelia wiped a tear from her cheek. Please come home tonight. We can talk without everyone else there. I'll tell Ryan not to come. I looked at her. You should have done that before he became the father of your child. The softness disappeared from her face. You don't have to be so cruel. I do. My kindness is exactly what you took advantage of. She stared at me with an expression that somehow held both hatred and desperation. Then she grabbed the envelope and threw it back onto my desk. Keep your stupid car. But if you drag me into court, I'll tell everyone you financially abused your pregnant wife. I didn't flinch. Say whatever you want. Just remember what I do for a living. She froze. She had forgotten. Most people did. I wasn't just the husband who paid the bills. I was a forensic accountant. My job was finding money people tried to hide. I reconstructed financial trails from deleted records and careless transactions. I testified in courtrooms where people with expensive lawyers eventually discovered one simple truth. Numbers don't care about tears. Without another word, Amelia turned and walked out. The office door slammed hard enough to rattle the glass. A voicemail transcription appeared on my phone. Mr. Hayes, this is Victoria Rains. I'm the chair of the Oversight Board for North Star Military Housing and Supply, where Major Hayes currently serves as procurement liaison. We've identified a potential financial irregularity involving a vendor connected to Ryan Maddox. Your name was given to us as someone who can trace money discreetly. Please return my call. I read the message once, then again, then a third time. Amelia had just threatened to pull me into her professional world. She had no idea that her professional world had already reached out to me first. When I arrived at Victoria Rain's office, the first thing I noticed was that it didn't look like the office of someone with that much power. Victoria Rain's office didn't look like the office of someone who held that much power. There were no walls covered with medals, no oversized executive desk, and no expensive leather chairs designed to make visitors feel small. Her office was on the 18th floor of a federal contracting oversight building overlooking the river, but the room itself was surprisingly simple. A round meeting table, 2 gray chairs, 1 framed photograph showing a warehouse that had been converted into military family housing. When I walked in, Victoria stood to greet me. She looked to be in her late 50s, tall and composed, with iron gray hair neatly pinned at the back of her neck. Her dark blue suit was clearly expensive, but it wasn't flashy. She carried herself like someone who had fired important people without ever needing to raise her voice. "Mr. Hayes," she said. "Thank you for coming. Ms. Rains. Victoria is fine." A second woman stood near the window holding a tablet. "This is Elaine Porter, our outside counsel." That immediately told me this situation was serious. Victoria motioned toward the chair across from her. "Before we begin, I want to make something clear. I didn't ask you here because you're Major Hayes' husband." "That's refreshing." A faint smile crossed her face. "I called because 2 different people recommended you for discreet forensic accounting work. One was a bank compliance officer. The other was the founder of a company you helped after uncovering an internal embezzlement scheme." "That sounds more dramatic than it really was." Elaine glanced over the top of her glasses. "I read the case file. It was exactly that dramatic." I took my seat. Victoria opened a folder and slid it across the table. "Northstar has seen unusual vendor spending over the past 9 months. At first, the amounts were too small to trigger concern. Then they grew." I still hadn't touched the folder. The expenses were categorized as military family support programs, veteran reintegration services, communications, consulting, and housing outreach. I finally looked up. "Amelia approves those vendors." "Yes," Victoria replied, in her role as procurement liaison. "And Ryan?" She nodded. "Ryan Maddox appears under 3 separate vendor entities." She listed them one by one. "Maddox Recovery Consulting, Harborline Veterans Media, Blue Ridge Outreach." I looked at her. "I assume those names mean something to you." "They do. I won't ask personal questions unless they relate directly to possible financial misconduct." "Fair enough." I opened the folder. Inside were invoices. $8,500 for a field reintegration workshop. $12,200 for a veteran family media package. $121,750 for an outreach activation program. Different company names. Different mailing addresses. But the formatting was nearly identical. The approval chain was identical. And every authorization carried the same signature. Major Amelia Hayes. Cold, familiar feeling settled over me. The $52,000 Amelia had taken from our reserve account wasn't the whole story. It was only the part she had stolen directly from our marriage. Victoria watched my expression. "You see it. Shell vendors." I nodded. "Inflated invoices. Possibly services that never existed." "Can you prove it?" she asked. "Not from these documents alone." "Can you find out?" "Yes." Elaine tapped a few notes into her tablet. "We're not hiring you to go after your wife." "I understand." Victoria held my gaze. "Do you?" "Yes. My marriage is personal. But fraud is just arithmetic." That earned a genuine smile. "Good." For the next 40 minutes, we reviewed everything. Vendor onboarding records, invoice metadata, payment approvals, internal emails, travel reimbursements, event calendars, building access logs. I asked for original files instead of PDF copies. Bank confirmation numbers, email headers, security footage from vendor meetings, procurement justification memos, any reimbursement paperwork connected to Ryan Maddox. Elaine took careful notes. Victoria listened without interrupting. Neither woman tried to protect Amelia. Neither tried to exaggerate her involvement either. That mattered. Near the end of the meeting, Victoria closed one folder and looked at me. There's one more issue. I looked up. Major Hayes has informed several staff members that you may arrive here in an unstable emotional state. I almost laughed. She came to my office first. That's why security was instructed not to confront you unless it became necessary. She folded her hands. As of this moment, you're here as my consultant. Does Amelia know that? No. Just then, someone knocked on the glass door. Victoria's assistant stepped inside, looking uneasy. Ms. Raines. I'm sorry to interrupt. What is it? Major Hayes is downstairs at reception. Victoria didn't seem surprised. Neither was I. The assistant continued. She says her husband is here to harass her. Is she alone? Victoria asked. The assistant hesitated. No. She's with Mr. Maddox. Elaine quietly muttered. Bold. I shook my head. Predictable. Victoria stood. Mr. Hayes, would you like to leave through the rear corridor? I shook my head. She accused me of coming here to harass her. Yes. If I leave through the back, she gets to keep that version of the story. Victoria studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. In that case, we'll walk out together. The reception area was bright and modern. Polished concrete floors. Muted military flags displayed along one wall. Low couches. Perfectly arranged potted plants that looked almost too flawless to be real. Amelia stood near the front desk wearing her military uniform pants with a civilian coat over them. One hand rested protectively on her stomach. Ryan stood beside her in designer sneakers that I strongly suspected I had paid for. His hands were buried in his pockets. The same smug half-smile he wore at my dining table was still on his face. 3 employees lingered nearby, pretending to stay busy while clearly listening to every word. The moment Amelia saw me, her expression changed. She instantly looked hurt. Daniel, she called loudly. Why are you here? Ryan stepped forward, trying to look like her protector. Ryan stepped forward. This is harassment, man. I stopped about 10 feet away. Victoria stood beside me. I was invited, I said. Amelia blinked. Invited? By who? By me, Victoria answered calmly. Amelia turned toward her. I'm sorry. And you are? Several employees nearby stopped pretending they weren't listening. Victoria offered a polite smile. Victoria Raines. Amelia frowned. A moment later, recognition crossed her face. Not complete recognition. Just enough. From oversight? From ownership and oversight, Victoria corrected. Ryan's posture stiffened. Amelia forced a nervous laugh. I didn't realize you were meeting with my husband. Your husband is here as a consultant, Victoria replied. A consultant? Amelia repeated. For what? Elaine stepped forward beside us. A financial review. Amelia looked from Elaine to Victoria, then finally at me. For the first time since I'd known her, she had no prepared response. Ryan recovered first. That sounds like a conflict of interest. I looked at him. Does it? You're obviously emotional, he said. Amelia is pregnant. You're trying to destroy her career because your pride got hurt. A woman behind the reception desk quietly sucked in a breath. Amelia rested a hand on Ryan's arm, pretending to calm him down. But I recognized the expression on her face. Relief. He had just given her an argument she could hide behind. Victoria turned toward Ryan. Mr. Maddox, are you currently employed by North Star Military Housing and Supply? He lifted his chin. I provide reintegration consulting. Through which company? His confidence slipped for the first time. That depends on the project. Victoria nodded slowly. That answer concerns me. Amelia stepped in quickly. Victoria, with all due respect, my personal situation is complicated. She pointed toward me. Daniel is retaliating. He froze our accounts yesterday. Our accounts, I corrected. After you transferred nearly $200,000 to him, the reception area fell completely silent. The color drained from Amelia's face. Ryan let out a short laugh. That's private. Victoria looked at him. Company money isn't. Ryan frowned. I don't know what you think you've found, but I'm not some criminal. Elaine spoke before anyone else could. No one called you one. She paused. It's interesting that you assumed we did. A security officer quietly appeared near the elevators. He wasn't threatening anyone. He was simply there. Amelia noticed him and lowered her voice. Daniel, please stop. Stop what? Punishing me. My eyes moved from the hand resting on her stomach to the expensive sneakers Ryan was wearing. Then back to Amelia. I'm documenting reality. Her eyes filled with tears. You used to protect me. I protected my wife. I held her gaze. Now I'm protecting myself. Before Amelia could respond, Victoria stepped forward. Major Hayes, you are not being questioned today. She spoke calmly but firmly. You will, however, receive formal notice requiring the preservation of all relevant documents. Amelia stared at her. Document preservation? Elaine nodded. Yes. Victoria continued. Do not delete any emails, text messages, vendor files, invoices, approval memorandums, access logs, or communications involving Ryan Maddox, Maddox Recovery Consulting, Harborline Veterans Media, Blue Ridge Outreach, or any related entity. Amelia simply stared. Ryan's expression changed. It happened quickly, but both Victoria and I saw it. Fear. Real fear. Amelia looked back at me. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Daniel, what did you do? I looked at the woman I had loved for 6 years. Then I answered honestly. I stopped looking away. Victoria turned toward the security officer. Please escort Mr. Maddox from the building. She looked directly at Ryan. You are not authorized to enter this floor or any North Star office without written approval. Ryan took a step backward. This is ridiculous. The guard approached. Ryan pointed at me. You think this makes you a man? I didn't move. No. I held his stare. Walking away from my house did. His face twisted with anger, but he didn't resist as the guard escorted him toward the elevators. Amelia watched him leave. For the first time, Ryan was the one being escorted out of the room. Not me. Victoria leaned closer and lowered her voice so only I could hear. Your wife doesn't know who owns the contractor supporting her command. I watched Amelia continue staring at the closing elevator doors, as though part of her future had just disappeared behind them. No, I replied quietly, but she's about to find out. By Friday afternoon, my SUV still hadn't been returned. I wasn't surprised. For years, Amelia had treated deadlines as suggestions whenever I was the one expected to absorb the consequences. Apologies, repayments, boundaries, promises. Everything could be delayed if she wrapped it in enough emotion. At 4:42 p.m. I sent her a single text. The SUV is due by 5. Leave the keys in the mailbox and remove your personal belongings. At 4:50, she replied. I can't believe you're doing this while I'm pregnant. 1 minute later, I answered. I can't believe I have to. At 5:19, my driveway was still empty. At 5:27, my doorbell camera sent me a notification. I opened the live feed from my office. Amelia was standing on my front porch. One hand rested on her stomach. The other held her phone. Behind her, Ryan carried 2 duffel bags and a garment bag. My SUV was parked at the curb. Ryan looked up at the camera and smirked. Nice place. Amelia lowered her voice. Stop. I'm just saying. Then she started typing on her phone. A second later, my own phone buzzed. We need to stay at the house tonight. Mom is too upset. Ryan can sleep on the couch. I stared at the message for several long seconds. Then I looked back at the live camera feed. Ryan stepped forward and tried the front door. Locked. He pulled the handle again, harder this time. Amelia turned and rang the doorbell. I pressed the speaker button. "What are you doing?" She jumped when she heard my voice. "Daniel, open the door." "No. This is still my home. It's my house," I replied. "I owned it before we got married." "You left with Ryan." "I didn't move out. I went to my parents' house because you scared everyone." Ryan stepped toward the camera. "Open the door. She's pregnant." "Then stop making her stand outside." He gave a smug little smile. "Cute." Amelia looked like she was about to cry. "Daniel, please. I need my clothes, my prenatal vitamins, and my work laptop. You can arrange a supervised pickup tomorrow." "Supervised?" she repeated, shocked. "I'm your wife." I looked straight into the camera. "You're the woman who brought the father of your child to my front door with luggage." Ryan's expression darkened. "Father of her child? You don't know that for sure." Amelia turned sharply toward him. "Ryan." He shrugged. "I'm just saying. Legally, things are complicated." I quietly saved the recording. "Thank you," I said. Ryan frowned. "For what?" "For speaking." His eyes narrowed. Amelia looked up at the camera, suddenly nervous. "Are you recording us?" "The doorbell camera records whenever it detects movement." "Daniel, don't do this." "I'm not doing anything. You're the ones standing at my door." Ryan glanced toward the side of the house. "I bet there's a back entrance." "Try it," I said, "and I'll call the police." Amelia's mouth fell open. "You'd call the police on your pregnant wife?" "No. I'd call the police on the man trying to enter my home without permission." Ryan laughed, but he didn't take another step. "Good." I opened another app and messaged the property manager. "Please document that Amelia Hayes and Ryan Maddox attempted to enter the property with luggage at 5:27 p.m. Ryan Maddox is not authorized to be on the property. If they refuse to leave, contact the police." Then I texted Rebecca. "Doorbell camera. They're attempting to enter. Saving all footage." Her reply came almost immediately. "Don't open the door. Tell them in writing to leave." I sent Amelia another text while watching her read it on the camera. "You are not authorized to bring Ryan Maddox into my home. You may arrange one supervised property pickup through our attorneys. Please leave the property." She finished reading it and looked furious. "Now you're humiliating me through text messages?" I answered through the speaker. "No. I'm creating a record." Ryan shook his head. "This guy is unbelievable." Amelia spun toward him. "Stop talking." He lifted both hands. "I'm trying to help." "You're not helping." For the first time, I saw real irritation pass between them. I watched carefully. Relationships built on fantasy usually begin falling apart the moment reality shows up. A car slowed in front of the house. Mrs. Keller, who lived 2 doors down, leaned toward her open window, staring at the scene. Amelia noticed immediately and stiffened. "Great," she whispered. "The neighbors are watching." Ryan actually waved at Mrs. Keller like an idiot. I closed my eyes for a second. When I opened them again, Amelia was crying. "Daniel, please. I know I hurt you. I know this is all happening so fast. I'm scared. I don't have anywhere peaceful to go. You chose Ryan. I didn't choose this chaos. No. You created it." Her face crumpled. "You were always supposed to be the calm one." That sentence hit me harder than it should have. Not because it sounded loving, because it revealed exactly what I had always been to her. Not her partner, her shelter, the place she expected to return to after setting the roof on fire. "Being calm doesn't mean I'll always be available," I said. Ryan snapped his head toward me. "You know what? Keep the house. We don't need your charity." Amelia looked at him. "Ryan, no." "Seriously," he said, grabbing one of the duffel bags. "This place smells like tax folders anyway." I almost smiled. Amelia didn't. "Where are we supposed to go?" she asked him. He blinked. "Your parents." "My parents are furious because the bank called. Then we'll get a hotel." "With what money?" Ryan looked away. There it was again. The silence that always appeared whenever responsibility showed up. I took a screenshot of the live camera feed. Then I called the non-emergency police line. I wasn't looking for drama. I wanted documentation. 14 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. By then Ryan had become much louder. "This is marital property," he argued. Officer Ramirez, a broad-shouldered woman with a calm, steady expression, spoke to me through the doorbell camera after I identified myself. "Sir, are you inside the residence?" "No, officer. I'm at my office. I wanted to avoid a direct confrontation." "Is the property titled solely in your name?" "Yes. I bought it before the marriage. My attorney has the deed." Amelia stared at the camera as if I had somehow betrayed her simply by knowing the facts. Officer Ramirez turned toward her. "Ma'am, if you need essential personal belongings, you can arrange a civil standby to retrieve them. You can't force your way inside," Officer Ramirez said. "And the homeowner has made it clear that the male guest is not welcome." Ryan scoffed. "Male guest?" Ramirez looked directly at him. "That would be you." By now, Mrs. Keller was openly watching from 2 houses down. Mr. Patel from across the street had stepped outside too. Amelia's face flushed with embarrassment. "Officer," she said, her voice shaking, "I live here." Ramirez's tone softened slightly. "Then arrange a civil standby to collect your personal belongings." She glanced at Ryan. "But tonight, because of the conflict and the presence of an unauthorized third party, you both need to leave." "Unauthorized third party," Ryan muttered. "I'm the baby's father." Amelia froze. Officer Ramirez raised an eyebrow. I quietly saved the audio recording. "Sir," Ramirez said evenly, "that has nothing to do with whether you're allowed to enter this property." Ryan realized too late what he'd admitted. Amelia looked up at the camera. "Daniel, please delete that." "No. Please. No." Officer Ramirez instructed them to leave. Ryan cursed under his breath, grabbed the bags, and threw them into the SUV. "My SUV." I spoke through the doorbell speaker. "Leave the keys." Amelia stopped beside the passenger door. "Daniel." "The keys?" Ryan threw his hands into the air. "We need transportation." "You need honesty," I replied. "Transportation can come later." Officer Ramirez glanced toward the camera. I couldn't tell if she was trying not to smile. Slowly, Amelia reached into her purse, took out the key fob, and placed it inside the mailbox. Ryan slammed the passenger door. Then he realized something. They didn't have another vehicle. For one perfect moment, nobody said a word. Finally, Amelia opened her phone and ordered a rideshare. After they left, Mrs. Keller walked over to my mailbox, took out the keys, and held them up to the camera. "Daniel, honey, I'll keep these safe until you get home." "Thank you, Mrs. Keller." She leaned closer to the camera. "For what it's worth, I never liked him. Despite everything that had happened, I laughed. It was the first genuine laugh I'd had in days." 2 hours later, Marlene posted a message in the extended family group chat. "Daniel threw his pregnant wife out and stranded her without a car. Please pray for Amelia and the innocent baby." Lucas immediately followed with 3 angry emojis. Some men only show their true character when it's time to step up. I read both messages. Then I uploaded a single screenshot. It showed Ryan standing on my porch saying, "I'm the baby's father." No caption. No explanation. Just the truth. Within a minute, typing bubbles appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. A few seconds later, Marlene deleted her message. But screenshots, like consequences, couldn't be taken back. The following afternoon, Marlene Bennett invited me to dinner with the confidence of someone who still believed she could control me. Her message arrived just after noon. "We're meeting at Bolaro's at 7 o'clock. The family needs to settle this. Don't embarrass Amelia any further. Bring your checkbook and an open heart." I read it twice. Not, "Bring your side of the story." Not, "Bring honesty." Just, "Bring your checkbook. Money first, heart second." I forwarded the message to Rebecca. She replied with a single question. "Do you want witnesses?" I looked at the family group chat. Marlene had already announced that I would be attending dinner, so we could discuss how to support Amelia and the baby in a healthy way. Then I looked at the folder sitting on my desk. The property deed. Mortgage payments I'd made for her parents. The money transferred to Ryan. Doorbell camera transcripts. The recording from the dinner. Group chat screenshots. The SUV registration. Vendor records from North Star. Everything. I replied with one word. Yes. I want witnesses. At 6:58 p.m. I walked into Bolaro's wearing a navy jacket, no wedding ring, and the quiet confidence of a man who no longer needed anyone in that room to believe him. Bolaro's was exactly the kind of restaurant Marlene loved. The lighting was soft enough to make everyone look wealthier than they really were. She had reserved a private dining room in the back. I recognized it immediately. I'd paid for enough family dinners there over the years. Just not this one. The room was full. Not only Harold, Marlene, Lucas, and Amelia. 2 of Amelia's aunts were there. A cousin. Her godmother. Even Harold's golf buddy, the man who always called me Numbers Guy, because learning my actual name would have required showing me respect. Amelia sat near the middle of the table. She looked pale, tired, tense. Ryan sat beside her again. He changed into a black shirt and now wore the expression of someone pretending to be the victim. Aunt Patricia noticed me first. "Daniel, there you are." Marlene stood with a rehearsed, sympathetic smile. "Thank you for coming." I glanced around the table. Wine had already been opened. Appetizers had already been served. Ryan held a steak knife in one hand, while Amelia's attention remained fixed on him. Some habits take a long time to die. "I'm here for 15 minutes, I said. Marlene's smile tightened. "We'll need more than 15 minutes to heal this family." I looked at her calmly. "We're not here to heal a family. We're here to establish the facts." Lucas snorted. "Here comes the spreadsheet." I nodded. "Yes. Here it comes." That was enough to silence him. I walked over and took the empty chair farthest away from Amelia. Marlene frowned. "You should sit beside your wife," Marlene said. "No." Amelia flinched. Ryan leaned back in his chair, his expression turning cold. I took a folder out of my bag and placed it on the table. Harold stared at it. "What's that?" "The reason I came." Marlene folded her hands together. "Before you start attacking people, I'd like to say something." "I'm sure you would." Her eyes narrowed for a moment, but she continued. "Amelia made a terrible mistake. But marriage isn't a business contract. You can't simply withdraw love because things become complicated." I nodded. "You're right. Marriage isn't a business contract. Fortunately, mortgages, car titles, bank accounts, and loans are." The mood in the room shifted. Amelia looked at me. "Daniel, please don't." I met her eyes. "You had privacy. You brought Ryan into it." Ryan set his steak knife down. "I'm only here because Amelia asked me to come." "Of course you are." Marlene lifted her chin. "This child deserves stability." "Then let's talk about stability." I opened the folder and slid the first document to the center of the table. This house was purchased by me 3 years before I married Amelia. She has no ownership interest in it. Harold's golf friend leaned forward to read it. Marlene spoke immediately. "A marital home is still a home. Not when someone tries to move the baby's father into it without the owner's permission." Aunt Patricia's head turned sharply toward Amelia. Amelia closed her eyes. I slid another document onto the table. The SUV Amelia was driving is also titled in my name. It was returned yesterday after police documented Ryan's attempt to enter my home. Lucas leaned forward. "You called the police on a pregnant woman?" I tapped the report. Officer Ramirez also documented that Ryan identified himself as the baby's father while standing on my porch. Aunt Patricia looked stunned. "He actually said that?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "That was taken out of context." I looked directly at him. "Then explain the context." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I picked up my phone and played the 12-second recording. Ryan's voice filled the private dining room. "I'm the baby's father. Then Officer Ramirez's calm voice followed. Sir, that isn't relevant to whether you're allowed to enter the property. The room fell completely silent. A server walked in carrying a plate of calamari, sensed the tension immediately, and quietly backed out again. Marlene's face turned red. You recorded a private family moment. It happened on my front porch. Amelia's godmother, June, looked at her. Honey, is that true? Amelia's voice trembled. It's complicated. June slowly leaned back in her chair. That means yes. Ryan leaned forward again. I'm not denying the biology. But Daniel keeps turning everything into property and money when there's an innocent child involved. I turned another page in the folder. Speaking of money, Amelia's eyes widened. No. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Over the last 2 years, Amelia transferred at least $194,700 from accounts I funded to Ryan Maddox. The additional expenses connected to him total another $136,410. And 6 weeks ago, she transferred $52,000 from our reserve account. Aunt Patricia gasped. Harold slowly turned toward Amelia. 52,000? Marlene gripped her napkin tightly. Lucas spoke up. That money could have been for anything. Exactly, I replied. That's why I brought the transaction descriptions. I handed copies around the table. Training consulting, hotel expenses, luxury retail purchases, rideshares, firearms range membership, recovery retreat, direct bank transfer. Amelia covered her face with one hand. Ryan looked around the room. For the first time all evening, he no longer looked like a misunderstood lover. He looked like a man searching for the nearest exit. Marlene finally found her voice. Why would you bring all of this here? Because you invited witnesses. She opened her mouth to respond. Nothing came out. Harold spoke quietly. Amelia, did you really send him that money? She didn't answer. That silence answered the question. Ryan suddenly stood. This is a setup. I looked up at him. Sit down. He laughed. You don't get to tell me what to do. No. But the restaurant manager might. He frowned. What? The private dining room door opened. A man in a gray suit walked inside. I recognized him from the front of the restaurant. He looked at Ryan with the tired expression of someone who had dealt with the same problem before. Mr. Maddox, he said. I thought that was you. Ryan went pale. The manager turned toward me. Mr. Hayes, you asked us to verify whether anyone in this room had an outstanding balance. He looked back at Ryan. Mr. Maddox does. He opened a small folder. Private lounge rental from March. Still unpaid. There's also an unresolved chargeback dispute. Every head at the table turned toward Ryan. He pointed at the manager. That was already handled. The manager shook his head. No, it wasn't. Lucas muttered under his breath. Dude. Ryan shot him an angry look. Amelia looked like she might be sick. Marlene stood up. This is unnecessary. Before I could answer, Aunt Patricia spoke sharply. No. Let him finish. Marlene turned to stare at her sister. Aunt Patricia folded her arms. You invited all of us here and told us Daniel abandoned Amelia. You forgot to mention that Amelia emptied nearly $200,000 into her ex-husband's accounts. June nodded slowly. And you also forgot to mention that the ex-husband is sitting here eating dinner with all of us. Ryan ripped off his napkin and threw it onto the table. I don't need this, Ryan said. I looked at him calmly. But you do need to understand one thing. I paused before continuing. From this point forward, any contact with me goes through legal counsel. If you try to enter my property again, I'll report it. If you use my bank accounts, my credit cards, my insurance, my address, my vehicle, or my name in any way, I'll treat it as fraud. Amelia's voice was barely a whisper. Daniel. I looked at her. The same applies to you. Her lips trembled. You're treating me like a criminal. I shook my head. No. I'm treating you like someone I can no longer trust. Harold leaned back in his chair, suddenly looking much older than he had a few minutes earlier. "What about our mortgage?" Marlene asked. Her voice sounded smaller now, but the entitlement was still there. I almost admired how focused she remained. I pulled out the last document from my folder. It was a repayment summary. "The money I gave you over the years was family support. I'm not suing you tonight, but I won't pay another dollar. If you want to discuss repaying what you owe, Rebecca can speak with your attorney." Marlene stared at the paper as though it might bite her. "You'd really do this to us?" I met her eyes. "You did this to yourselves." Amelia stood up, tears running down her face. "I know I hurt you, but you're destroying everyone." I gathered the papers back into my folder. "No, Amelia. I was the one holding everyone together. You confused that with me being beneath you." The room fell silent. For the first time, no one defended her. It wasn't a complete shift, but it was the first time the room had quietly turned against her. I walked toward the door. Behind me, Ryan called out, "You really think she'll choose you after all this?" I stopped and looked back. Amelia wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at Ryan. For the first time, she seemed to realize that the man she had chosen brought nothing into her life except more problems and more bills. "That's what you still don't understand," I said. "I'm not asking her to choose me." Then I walked out. I left them behind with untouched food, unpaid debts, and the truth sitting in the middle of the table. The following Tuesday morning, I got a phone call from the hospital. "Mr. Hayes?" a woman asked. "This is Northridge Women's Health. We're calling to confirm your attendance for Major Amelia Hayes' prenatal appointment tomorrow." I was standing in line waiting for coffee. The man in front of me was arguing with the barista about oat milk. For a moment, normal life felt strangely offensive. "I didn't schedule that appointment," I said. I heard papers shuffling. "You're listed as the spouse and support person. Remove me as the support person." There was a brief pause. "Major Hayes also requested that you sign several forms in person." "What forms?" "Insurance coordination, birth registration, pre-admission paperwork, and optional parental acknowledgement documents." The sounds of the coffee shop disappeared. Parental acknowledgement. She hadn't just asked me privately to raise another man's child. She had already started preparing legal paperwork around the lie. "Please make a note that I will not attend to sign, authorize, or acknowledge paternity. Any paperwork requiring my signature must go through my attorney." The woman's voice became more careful. "Of course, sir." I gave her Rebecca's contact information, stepped out of the coffee line, and immediately called my lawyer. Rebecca listened without interrupting. "Don't ignore the appointment," she said. "Why not?" "Because she could later claim you refused to support her during a vulnerable medical appointment. We need a clean record. You attend. You remain in the public waiting area. You decline every legal document. Then you leave calmly. I'll send one of my associates with you." I gave a tired smile. "Always calmly." "Exactly." The next afternoon, I arrived at Northridge Women's Health with Rebecca's associate, Paul Lynn. Paul was young, sharply dressed, and looked almost too polite until someone tried to pressure him. Amelia was already sitting in the waiting room. Ryan was beside her, scrolling through his phone. She was wearing a soft blue dress. When she saw me, relief and fear appeared on her face at the same time. "You came." "I came to decline the paperwork in person." Her expression immediately fell. Ryan stood up. "Of course. To you, everything is paperwork." Paul stepped forward. "Mr. Hayes won't be discussing legal matters directly." Ryan looked him up and down. "And you are?" "His attorney." Amelia looked at me. "Daniel, did you really have to bring a lawyer to a prenatal appointment?" I answered without hesitation. "You brought the baby's father." Several women sitting in the waiting room looked up. Ryan's face reddened. "Keep your voice down." "Interesting request." Amelia stood and gently reached for my arm. Before she could touch me, I stepped back. Pain crossed her face. "Please," she said quietly. "I know you're angry, but I'm scared." The nurse said the baby's heartbeat was strong at my last appointment. I thought maybe, if you heard it. She swallowed hard. You'd remember who you are. For a brief moment, her words almost reached me. That was what made them so cruel. She knew exactly which part of me to appeal to. My sense of responsibility, my compassion, my belief that every child deserves protection. But compassion without truth becomes a trap. I looked at her steadily. I do remember who I am. That's exactly why I brought a lawyer. Just then, a nurse stepped into the waiting room. Major Hayes. Amelia looked from me to Ryan. Ryan didn't move. She noticed. So did I. Are you coming? Amelia asked Ryan. Yeah, he answered a little too quickly. Of course. The nurse checked her clipboard. I'm sorry, but only one support person is allowed. The room fell into an awkward silence. Ryan glanced at me. Well, he's still the husband. For a second, I almost laughed. Amelia slowly turned toward Ryan. What? He shrugged. Legally, for now. It might be easier for the insurance. The last bit of color drained from her face. I didn't say a word. My silence hurt more than any argument could have. The nurse shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am. Amelia swallowed hard. Ryan, I need you in there. He hesitated. A.M. I want to be there, but if paperwork comes up, Daniel should hear it. Paul spoke calmly. Mr. Hayes won't be signing anything. Ryan snapped. Nobody asked you. Paul didn't flinch. I'm here because someone did. Amelia wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know what to do. I looked at Ryan. Try asking the father. He glared at me. You're enjoying this? No. I'm documenting it. Paul casually lifted his phone. Recording. Ryan noticed and immediately stepped back. The nurse cleared her throat. We need to continue. After a long pause, Amelia chose Ryan. She hesitated, but she still chose him. The two of them disappeared through the exam room door. Paul and I remained in the waiting room. Across from us sat an elderly woman with a knitting bag. She looked at me with such genuine sympathy that I had to look away. 23 minutes later, the exam room door opened. Amelia came out crying. Ryan followed behind her looking angry. That doctor had no right to ask me about legal responsibility in front of her, he complained. Paul stood. I stayed seated. Amelia looked at me. He said we should speak with a family lawyer before the baby is born. That's good advice, I replied. Ryan rolled his eyes. Doctors think they know everything. Amelia looked down. He asked Ryan if he was willing to be listed as the father. Her voice broke. Ryan said, we needed to explore our options. There it was. Options. The favorite word of people who wanted the benefits without accepting the consequences. Amelia turned toward Ryan. You told me you wanted this baby. I do. You told me you loved me. I do. Then why wouldn't you simply say yes? Ryan lowered his voice. Because Daniel is still legally your husband. If he's willing to provide insurance. There's no reason to rush. The waiting room had gone completely quiet. A young man sitting in the corner muttered, Wow! Ryan pointed at him. Mind your own business. The young man immediately raised both hands. Gladly. Amelia looked at me, completely shattered. Did you know he'd say that? No. I suspected. Paul stepped forward and handed Amelia a large envelope. She stared at it. What's this? Paul answered professionally. Notice of temporary filing. Petition for divorce. Preservation of financial records. And notice of non-acknowledgement of paternity. Her hand shook so badly that the envelope bent. At the hospital? She whispered. Rebecca had warned me the timing might seem harsh. But Amelia had chosen the hospital to pull me toward legal fatherhood. I simply answered through the same system, in the same place, creating the same legal record before the situation became even more complicated. I stood. I sincerely hope your baby is healthy. I mean that. But I won't become the legal shield for the choices you and Ryan made. Ryan stepped toward me. You smug son of a... Paul immediately stepped between us. Don't. The nurse at the front desk reached for the phone. Ryan stopped where he was. Amelia clutched the envelope against her chest. Daniel, please don't leave. I looked at her. I already did. I walked out of the clinic. As soon as I reached the parking lot, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Victoria. Internal hearings scheduled for Friday. Major Hayes and Ryan Maddox are named in the preliminary findings. Your attendance is requested. A second message appeared from an unknown number. This is Ryan. We need to talk like men. You don't want everything coming out. I stared at the message for several seconds. Then I forwarded it to Rebecca, Paul, and Victoria. Ryan was right about one thing. Everything was about to come out. North Star held its annual military family charity gala at the Monroe Hotel. It was the kind of place filled with crystal chandeliers, polished marble floors, and people who looked honest under warm lighting. Amelia had spent months organizing the event. She chose the donor wall, the silent auction, the military spouse scholarship display, the floral arrangements, even the soft ivory backdrop where officers and board members posed for photographs that looked effortlessly happy. I knew every detail because she had talked about the gala over dinner for nearly 6 months. She once called it the night that would define her career. By Friday, it had become something very different. It had become a room full of witnesses. Victoria asked me to attend as part of the investigation team. Rebecca approved the decision, as long as I didn't confront Amelia privately. Elaine would be there. So would 2 internal auditors, company security, and a representative from the insurance carrier. I'd learned something about fraud. Once enough money is involved, everyone wants a front row seat. I arrived at the gala at 7 o'clock wearing the black suit I had bought for an anniversary dinner Amelia had canceled because Ryan needed grounding after a rough week. The irony felt fitting. The ballroom sparkled under crystal chandeliers. A string quartet played beside the donor wall. Military officers in dress uniforms mingled with executives in tailored suits. Military spouses chatted over glasses of champagne. A photographer moved through the room, capturing carefully staged laughter beneath warm lights. North Star's logo glowed behind the stage. Amelia stood near the entrance in a dark red dress, one hand resting on her stomach. Ryan stood beside her wearing a velvet jacket and the same smug expression that somehow never matched the trouble he was in. The moment Amelia saw me, her smile disappeared. Ryan's only got bigger. Bold move, he said as I walked over. Showing up at her event. I was invited. By your imagination? Before I could answer, Victoria stepped up beside me. By me, she said. Ryan's smile faded. Amelia quickly looked around. Victoria, can we please not do this here? This night is important to the organization. Yes, Victoria replied evenly. It is. Amelia lowered her voice. If this is about the review, I can explain everything next week. You already had your opportunity to preserve the records. I did. Elaine stepped up behind Victoria. You deleted messages from the vendor approval channel. Amelia froze. Ryan immediately turned toward her. I didn't delete anything important, Amelia said. That wasn't your decision to make, Elaine replied. Just then, one of the board members walked over with a cautious smile. Victoria, is everything all right? Not yet. Those 2 words carried farther than they should have. People nearby began paying attention. Amelia whispered, please. But Victoria wasn't speaking to her anymore. She was speaking to everyone. The program officially began at 7:30. Amelia walked onto the stage with the confidence of someone pretending thin ice was solid marble. She welcomed the donors. She thanked the military families. She spoke about courage, resilience, sacrifice, and the communities we build for those who serve. I stood near the side of the ballroom beside Elaine. When Amelia said, at North Star, trust is the foundation of every home we build, Elaine quietly made a note on her tablet. Ryan stood near the front of the room, clapping louder than anyone else. Then Victoria stepped onto the stage. The applause changed. Not louder, sharper, more attentive. Most employees knew Victoria as the chair of the oversight board. Very few knew she also controlled the majority ownership through Rains Meridian Holdings. That was intentional. Victoria preferred to let managers manage while owners observed. Tonight, the observing was over. "Thank you, Major Hayes," Victoria said as she accepted the microphone. Amelia stepped aside, forcing herself to keep smiling. Victoria looked across the ballroom. Tonight was meant to celebrate the families who support our military. And we still will. Their service, sacrifice, and trust deserve that recognition. She paused. But before we continue, I need to address a matter involving the integrity of this organization. The ballroom fell silent. Amelia's fingers tightened around her note cards. Ryan quietly took half a step backward. Victoria continued. Over the past 9 months, Northstar has paid significant sums to outside vendors for reintegration consulting, outreach programs, media services, and family support. Our preliminary review has uncovered serious irregularities involving vendor identities, invoice authenticity, undisclosed personal relationships, and conflicts of interest. A ripple spread through the crowd. "Victoria," Amelia whispered. Victoria never looked at her. "To protect this organization, our employees, the military families we serve, and our donors. We have referred this matter to outside legal counsel and the appropriate authorities. Effective immediately. All procurement approval authority held by Major Amelia Hayes is suspended pending investigation." The word suspended seemed to hit Amelia physically. Her shoulders dropped. Across the room, Ryan slowly started moving toward a side exit. Security reacted before he could. 2 guards stepped directly into his path. He forced a nervous laugh. "I was just going outside for some air." Elaine walked onto the stage and handed Victoria a folder. Victoria opened it. "Mr. Ryan Maddox." Her voice echoed through the ballroom. "You are not authorized to represent Maddox Recovery Consulting, Harborline Veterans Media, Blue Ridge Outreach, or any related vendor entity on Northstar property. You were previously instructed not to attend company events. You will now leave with security." Gasps spread across the room. Ryan's face turned bright red. "This is defamation," Elaine answered from the floor. "Then you can discuss it with your attorney." Amelia instinctively stepped toward Ryan, then stopped. Everyone saw it. Everyone noticed the hesitation. Ryan pointed straight at me. "This is all because of him. He's doing this because his wife chose me." The ballroom went completely silent. Some statements destroy the person who says them before anyone else has to respond. That was one of them. Amelia made a sound like someone had punched the air out of her lungs. Victoria looked at Ryan with calm curiosity. "Mr. Maddox, do you understand that you just publicly admitted to having a personal relationship with the officer who approved payments to your vendor companies?" Ryan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Elaine looked around the ballroom. In front of all these witnesses, a donor standing near the bar whispered, "Oh my God!" Ryan tried to recover. "That's not what I meant." I took 1 step forward, just enough for him to notice. "You always talk too much when you think you're winning," I said. He looked at me with pure hatred. "At least I don't hide behind women with money." The room shifted again. Victoria slowly turned toward him. "Mr. Maddox," she said calmly, "I am the woman with money." Several people quietly gasped. Amelia stared at Victoria. At that moment, everything finally clicked. Too late, too painful, too complete. Victoria continued. "And I own the organization your access depended on." Ryan's confidence disappeared instantly. Security escorted him toward the exit while he muttered curses under his breath. Even the photographer lowered his camera. Amelia stood beneath the golden lights, humiliated in the very room where she had hoped to shine. Victoria turned back to the audience. "To our donors, I sincerely apologize for the interruption. Your contributions tonight will be placed into a separate account managed directly by Rains Meridian and outside legal counsel. No funds connected to this investigation will affect the military families we serve. It was professional, controlled, and devastating. The applause started slowly. Then it grew stronger. People weren't applauding the scandal. They were applauding the fact that someone had taken control. Amelia stepped down from the stage as though the floor itself might reject her. She walked straight toward me. "Did you give her everything?" she whispered. "I gave her the records." "You ruined me." I looked at her. "No." I opened the books. Her eyes filled with tears. "This was my career. You used it to pay your ex-husband. I was trying to help him. You were trying to keep him." She flinched. Behind her, employees whispered among themselves. Several donors quietly looked away. One board member removed his name badge and walked out. The first public turning point had happened at Bilaro's. This was the second. Bigger, brighter, permanent. Amelia reached out and grabbed my wrist. "Please," she whispered, "don't let Victoria fire me." I looked down at her hand until she slowly let go. "You still think I control the consequences?" Her face crumpled. "You could speak for me. I already spoke for you. For 6 years." I stepped back. Victoria approached carrying 2 folders. "Mr. Hayes," she said, returning to business. "We need your signature on the chain of custody acknowledgement." "Of course." Amelia looked back and forth between us. In that moment, she finally understood the full weight of what she'd done. She had brought Ryan into my home and asked me to raise his child. Now the woman who owned the company where Amelia worked was asking me to sign the documents that would help strip away the authority Amelia had abused. The following Sunday, Amelia came to the house alone. No Ryan. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was that she rang the doorbell only once. She stood under the porch light wearing a gray sweater. The ends of her hair were damp from the rain. In one hand, she carried a small bakery bag from the shop near our old grocery store. The same bakery where we used to buy cinnamon rolls every Saturday morning, back when our marriage still felt normal. I watched her through the doorbell camera from inside the living room. For the first time since that dinner, I was actually home. The house felt different with half of her belongings gone. Cleaner, yes, but not happier. Empty spaces have their own kind of weight. The blue vase that used to sit in the hallway was gone. The hook where her green raincoat always hung was empty. The drawer she used in the bathroom stood bare. Divorce doesn't erase a shared life. It simply reveals all the places where it once existed. She rang the bell once more. I opened the door, but left the security chain in place. Her eyes immediately dropped to it. Pain crossed her face. "You really think I'm dangerous?" "I think the chain is useful." She looked down at the bakery bag. "I brought the cinnamon rolls you like." "I'm not hungry." She gave a small, sad smile. "No, I guess you're not." Rain tapped softly against the porch roof. Without an audience, she looked different. Her parents weren't standing behind her. Ryan wasn't smirking over her shoulder. Lucas wasn't making sarcastic jokes. It was just Amelia. Her eyes were wet. She was pregnant. Standing outside the front door of the house she once believed would always open for her. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Through the door." Her mouth tightened. "Daniel." "Through the door." She swallowed. "Fine." I waited. She took a slow breath. "North Star suspended me." "I know. Of course you do. I submitted the records. I'm not the one making employment decisions." She looked at me. "You and Victoria seemed very close at the gala." There it was. Even with everything falling apart, she still reached for jealousy, as if it were a weapon she hadn't already lost. "Don't do that," I said. "Do what?" "Don't compare my professional work to your affair." For a brief moment, she looked ashamed, then only exhausted. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. I said nothing. "I mean it," she continued. "I know you don't believe me, but I really am sorry." I looked at her. "What exactly are you sorry for?" She blinked. "Everything. Name it." Her lips parted. The rain filled the silence. I watched her struggle to find a version of the truth that didn't expose too much. "I'm sorry for hurting you," she finally said. "Be specific." Her eyes flashed. "Daniel, I'm trying." "No." You're summarizing. She glanced toward the street. Mrs. Keller's curtains shifted next door. Amelia noticed and lowered her voice. I'm sorry I slept with Ryan. The words hung between us. Her hand instinctively rested on her stomach. I'm sorry I got pregnant. That sounds like you're apologizing for the consequence. She winced. I'm sorry I lied. Tears filled her eyes. I'm sorry I asked you to raise his baby. For the first time, she said it without hiding behind excuses. No talk about modern families. No speeches about biology not being everything. No mention of Ryan struggling. Just the truth. I let the silence sit. She wiped away a tear. I thought, if everyone was there at dinner, you'd calm down. You always calm down. I know. I thought if my parents were there, you wouldn't leave. I know. I thought if Ryan was honest, maybe it wouldn't feel like such a betrayal. I looked at her. Did it? She closed her eyes. No. Why did you bring him into my house? She slowly opened her eyes again. Because he said we needed to show you we were serious. He said if you saw he wasn't going away, you'd stop fighting reality. I nodded once. Reality fought back. A broken laugh escaped her before turning into a sob. Ryan isn't who I thought he was. I looked at her through the narrow opening in the door. He's exactly who he showed himself to be. You just preferred the version that made me disposable. She covered her mouth for a moment. I thought he'd stay. Instead, I don't have anywhere stable anymore. My parents are angry. Lucas says I ruined everything. Ryan's staying with a friend because he says the stress isn't good for him. Of course he is. She looked exhausted. They removed my procurement access. Northstar shut off all my system credentials. I can't even contact half my team. My work email is gone. That's what investigations do. I know. She looked past me into the hallway. I miss this house. It was an honest sentence. It just didn't help her. The house didn't betray you, I said. You betrayed the person who paid for it. Her shoulders shook. Can I come inside for 10 minutes? No. Please. I just want to sit somewhere that feels normal. Normal is gone. She stared at the security chain. You hate me? No. She looked surprised. I meant it. Hatred still requires a kind of emotional closeness. I wasn't willing to give her that anymore. I don't hate you, I said. I'm simply done arranging my life around your comfort. She hugged the bakery bag against her chest. I can give the baby Ryan's last name. I'll tell the court you're not the father. I'll sign whatever Rebecca wants. We can separate for a while. And maybe after the baby's born, we can figure out who we are. I shook my head. No, you don't have to decide forever today. I already did. Her face twisted with pain. How can you just switch your feelings off? I didn't. You wore them out. That hurt her more than shouting ever could. She stepped back, then took another step forward. Is there someone else? The question was so unexpected that I simply stared at her. What? Victoria. She couldn't even finish the sentence. No. But someday there will be someone else. And when that happens, it won't be any of your business. I'm still your wife. Legally. Temporarily. Fresh tears rolled down her face. You're cruel now. No. I'm honest now. You just preferred me when I was gentle. At that moment, a courier pulled up across the street and checked the house number. He walked to the porch carrying an envelope. Daniel Hayes? Yes. I opened the door just far enough for the security chain to hold. I signed through the gap. He handed me the envelope and left. Amelia looked at the return address. Lane Family Law. More papers, she whispered. Temporary orders. What do they say? Your attorney will receive copies. I don't even have a lawyer yet. Then get one. With what money? Your salary. Your parents. Ryan. Anyone except me. She slowly shook her head. I don't even recognize you anymore. You never had to. You only had to use me. She recoiled as if I'd physically struck her. I didn't apologize. I opened the envelope just enough to confirm the contents. Temporary separation agreement. Property access procedures. Notice of non-acknowledgement of paternity. Demand to preserve evidence. Claim for reimbursement of marital funds transferred to Ryan. Notice regarding unauthorized use of my financial accounts. Every page was clean. Every sentence was precise, like a perfectly sharpened blade. Amelia watched my expression and understood what was inside. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Is there any version of this? Will you forgive me? For the first time that evening, hope appeared in her eyes. Ryan had become so involved in my marriage that Amelia now trusted his opinion about me more than my own. She even told me Ryan believed I was unstable. I forwarded every message to my lawyer, Rebecca, then buried myself in what I understood best. Numbers. Unlike people, numbers only lied when someone made them, and those lies always left a trail. I reviewed 3 years of bank records from the reserve account I had built before we married and later gave Amelia limited access to. What I found was devastating. It started with small payments to Ryan disguised as consulting fees, then grew into hotel stays, ride shares, expensive gifts, firearms range memberships, rehabilitation retreats, restaurant bills, and finally a $52,000 transfer 6 weeks earlier. Altogether, Amelia had funneled nearly $195,000 directly to Ryan, with another $36,000 in related expenses. On top of that, I had spent over $139,000 supporting her parents through mortgage payments, taxes, medical bills, and home repairs. I realized I had never been blind, only trusting, and trust had made me an easy target. That morning I removed Amelia's access to my accounts, took Ryan's truck off my insurance policy, and confirmed the SUV Amelia drove legally belonged to me. Soon after, Amelia stormed into my office demanding to know why I had frozen her cards and canceled her parents' mortgage payment. I calmly told her I was simply protecting myself and would no longer fund the man she cheated on me with. She insisted Ryan was struggling and that I was punishing innocent people, but I refused to accept responsibility for the life she had created behind my back. When she accused me of invading her privacy, I turned my laptop toward her and showed her a complete spreadsheet documenting every transfer, purchase, and payment connected to Ryan. She tried to justify some of it as helping his recovery, but the hotel bills and luxury expenses spoke for themselves. I made it clear that my lawyer had already started the divorce process and that from now on she would have to rely on her own salary, her parents, or Ryan. Before leaving, I handed her notice to return the SUV by Friday since it belonged to me. Furious, she threatened to accuse me of financially abusing a pregnant wife if I took her to court. I reminded her that I was a forensic accountant who specialized in uncovering hidden money, and empty accusations would not survive real evidence. After she left, I received an unexpected voicemail from Victoria Rains, chair of the oversight board at North Star Military Housing and Supply, where Amelia worked. She explained there were suspicious financial transactions involving vendors connected to Ryan Maddox and asked for my help tracing the money quietly. As I listened, I realized Amelia had unknowingly invited me into the very investigation that could expose everything she and Ryan had been hiding. Officer Ramirez looked at me carefully as Amelia admitted she had eventually realized those companies belonged to Ryan. "Did you know the businesses were his?" I asked. She stayed silent for a moment before quietly saying, "Not at first." Then, with tears in her eyes, she admitted, "Later." That single word changed everything. Ramirez wrote it down and warned Amelia not to delete anything, not to contact Ryan, and to hire a lawyer as soon as possible. Amelia pleaded that she never realized things had gotten this bad. I reminded her she knew enough to keep it hidden. She had no answer. About 20 minutes later, Elaine arrived with company security and an evidence courier. From that point on, everything became official. They photographed every item, sealed the evidence, completed chain of custody paperwork, and documented everything. Inside the folder recovered from my SUV were invoices, approval forms, handwritten notes, and even a donor list from the North Star Gala with several names circled. Elaine's expression turned serious. "This is much bigger than we thought," she said. She believed it could involve donor solicitation fraud and fake sponsorships that still needed to be verified. Just before midnight, Ryan called me. Rebecca had warned me not to engage with him, but both Elaine and Officer Ramirez encouraged me to answer on speaker while they listened. Ryan accused me of enjoying his downfall and claimed I had been waiting for the chance to feel superior. I asked where he was, and when he mocked me for sounding like a police officer, I calmly told him I was standing next to one. His attitude changed immediately. He admitted the companies were real but claimed the projects had simply been delayed. When I mentioned the invoices he had left in my SUV, he went quiet. Then he admitted Amelia had approved budgets and signed paperwork, adding that she never asked questions because asking would have ruined everything. I asked if he was saying Amelia knowingly approved false invoices. He replied that she simply chose not to look too closely. Before ending the call, he admitted Amelia had believed I would never leave because I was too decent. I told him she had been wrong. As the call ended, he asked me to tell Amelia he had loved her. I refused and told him to say it himself. The next morning, police arrested Ryan at a cheap motel after he tried using a card connected to another fraud complaint. Investigators soon discovered another victim, Tessa Miller, who had given him $12,000 for a documentary project that never existed. By the end of the day, 2 more women had come forward with similar stories. As the truth spread, Amelia's parents stopped blaming me and finally admitted Ryan had deceived them too. Marlene even left me a voicemail saying they had only been trying to protect their daughter. I deleted it without listening again. I no longer needed apologies or excuses. The evidence spoke for itself. That evening, Amelia sent me 2 messages. The first read, "I saw the police report. He lied to me too." A minute later she added, "But I chose to believe him. I don't know how to live with that." I never replied. Some lessons can only be learned in silence. A few weeks later, we met in family court. It looked nothing like the dramatic courtrooms on television. There were no shouting lawyers or emotional speeches, just fluorescent lights, tired people, stacks of paperwork, and lives being divided according to the law. Amelia sat across from me beside a lawyer I had never met. She wore a simple black maternity dress with no makeup, her hair pulled back, and she looked exhausted. For the first time since everything had begun, Ryan wasn't sitting beside her. His absence said more than his presence ever could. Beside me sat Rebecca, calm and steady as always. Paul sat behind Rebecca and me with several folders as we waited for the hearing to begin. This wasn't the final divorce trial. It was only for temporary orders covering the house, bank accounts, property access, financial support, preservation of evidence, and my request to officially state that I would not acknowledge paternity. Amelia's attorney, Ms. Grant, opened with sympathy. She explained that her client was pregnant, emotionally distressed, suspended from her procurement duties, and currently without stable access to the family home or the SUV she had been driving. Judge Holloway, a silver-haired woman wearing reading glasses low on her nose, quietly reviewed the file before speaking. The residence was purchased by Mr. Hayes before the marriage and is titled solely in his name. "Yes, Your Honor," Ms. Grant replied. "But it served as the marital home." Rebecca stood. Mr. Hayes never denied Major Hayes access to her personal belongings. He offered a supervised civil standby so she could collect them. What he denied was entry to Mr. Ryan Maddox, the acknowledged biological father of her unborn child, after Mr. Maddox attempted to enter the property carrying luggage. The judge looked up from the file. "There is video of that incident?" "Yes, Your Honor." Rebecca handed the clerk both the transcript and the video recording. Ms. Grant admitted Ryan had been there but argued emotions had been running high. Judge Holloway quietly read the transcript before looking directly at Amelia. "Major Hayes, did Mr. Maddox state on that recording that he was the baby's father?" Amelia lowered her head. "Yes." "And you are not claiming Mr. Hayes is the biological father?" "No." The judge made a note. For the first time in weeks, I felt myself breathe a little easier. Ms. Grant quickly shifted the conversation. "My client admits mistakes were made, but Mr. Hayes suddenly restricted her financial access, leaving her in a vulnerable position." Rebecca stood again. "My client restricted large transfers only after discovering that substantial marital and premarital funds had been diverted to Mr. Maddox. Financial records show at least $194,700 in direct transfers, another $36,410 in related expenses, and a separate $52,000 transfer made just 6 weeks before the pregnancy was revealed. The courtroom grew noticeably quieter. Judge Holloway turned another page. Major Hayes, did you transfer $52,000 to Mr. Maddox? Amelia answered softly, yes. For what purpose? Her attorney lightly touched her arm, but Amelia answered anyway. He told me he needed to clear his debts so he could be there for the baby. The judge paused. And did he actually pay those debts? Amelia's face crumbled. I don't know. Rebecca continued. Mr. Maddox is currently under investigation for multiple fraud allegations, including vendor payments connected to Major Hayes procurement approvals. We are not asking this court to decide those issues today. We are only asking that Mr. Hayes not be required to financially support or house the consequences of those decisions. Ms. Grant objected, calling the statement prejudicial. Sustained in part, Judge Holloway said. Keep your arguments focused on family law. Rebecca nodded. Understood, Your Honor. Our position is simple. Mr. Hayes should not be ordered to financially support circumstances created by funds his wife diverted to the acknowledged father of her unborn child. Ms. Grant tried another approach. My client contributed emotionally to the marriage. Judge Holloway looked at her over her glasses. Emotional contribution does not create ownership of premarital property during a temporary hearing. I glanced down at my hands. They were perfectly steady. When I looked up, Amelia was watching me. The anger that had once filled her eyes was gone. What remained was the painful realization that the truth had reached a place where neither emotion nor manipulation could change it. The judge moved on. Mr. Hayes, you are requesting an order confirming that you do not acknowledge paternity and will not sign any preliminary parental documents. Yes, Your Honor. You understand that after the child is born, additional legal filings may still be required depending on state law. I understand. She turned toward Amelia. Major Hayes, do you object? Her lawyer whispered something to her. After a long pause, Amelia slowly shook her head. No. Then, almost in a whisper, she added, he is not the father. Hearing those words didn't hurt as much as I expected. I had already lived through the pain. Judge Holloway issued her temporary orders. I would keep exclusive possession of the house. Amelia could retrieve her belongings only through a supervised civil standby. The SUV would remain with me. All joint accounts would stay restricted while the financial investigation continued. I would continue any legally required spousal insurance coverage until further order, but I would not be required to sign birth documents, acknowledge paternity, or accept any financial obligations related to the unborn child beyond what the law required. The judge also confirmed that Harold and Marlene's mortgage was not my responsibility. From that point forward, all non-emergency communication between Amelia and me would go through our attorneys. Finally, Judge Holloway addressed both legal teams. Given the evidence of significant financial transfers and the ongoing investigations, I am ordering immediate preservation of all records. No emails, text messages, banking records, procurement files, vendor documents, or financial data are to be deleted. Counsel will coordinate with any criminal or civil investigations, but this divorce will not become a discovery circus. Rebecca nodded. Understood, Your Honor. Ms. Grant quietly agreed as well. As everyone packed up after the hearing, Amelia stood and called my name. Rebecca lightly touched my arm, silently warning me to be careful. I looked at Amelia but stayed where I was. Holding the back of her chair for support, she spoke with a trembling voice. I finally heard you today. It was such an unexpected thing to say that I didn't know how to respond. She took a deep breath and continued. For years I kept saying you never listened to me. But today I heard what I sound like when I can't explain my own actions. Her lawyer quietly tried to stop her, but Amelia ignored her. I'm sorry. There was no audience left, no Ryan, no family, no drama. Just an apology in an empty courtroom where apologies carried no legal weight. I looked at her and said, I hope you're saying that for yourself too. Her eyes filled with tears. She asked if we could ever talk again, maybe just about logistics, maybe about us. I gently answered, there is no us. She nodded as if she had expected it. Then she quietly admitted that Victoria had officially terminated her procurement position at North Star. The letter said my judgment exposed the organization to unacceptable risk, she said with a bitter laugh. That's a polite way of saying I ruined my life for a man who stole from everyone. I picked up my folder. Looking at my bare ring finger, she whispered, I used to think your calm meant you didn't feel deeply. I met her eyes and replied, no, it meant I was trying not to destroy what I loved. Before she could say anything else, Rebecca and I walked out. In the hallway, Rebecca handed me a copy of the temporary order and said, you handled that well. I shook my head. It doesn't feel like I won. She smiled slightly. You didn't come here to win. You came here to stop bleeding. She was right. As I reached the courthouse exit, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Victoria. The board had officially approved Amelia's termination. Ryan's vendor files had been turned over to law enforcement, and when everything settled, she wanted to discuss a business opportunity with me. For the first time in weeks, a message about the future didn't feel like another burden. Outside, I stepped into the cold sunlight. Amelia walked out behind me with her lawyer and stopped when she saw me. We looked at each other across the courthouse steps for a brief moment. Then I turned away first. That decision wasn't made by the court. It was mine. A few weeks later, Amelia signed the final divorce papers in Rebecca's conference room. The table had a water stain shaped like a crooked heart. One of those meaningless details grief somehow refuses to forget. Rebecca sat beside me, while Amelia sat across the table with Ms. Grant. No one argued. No one raised their voice. At first, no one even cried. Somehow, that quiet made the end of our marriage feel even heavier. Instead of dramatic speeches, it ended with papers sliding across a table and pens clicking open. 3 weeks earlier, Amelia had given birth to a baby boy named Miles. I only learned his name through our attorneys. After a paternity test and court order, Ryan was officially listed as the father on the birth certificate. He didn't even show up at the hospital until 2 days after Miles was born. By then, Amelia had finally stopped believing he would become the man she imagined. Ryan's problems only continued to grow. North Star filed a civil lawsuit against him. 3 different women reported him for fraud. Even the restaurant Bolaros pursued him for unpaid bills. The investigation into my SUV also became part of a larger criminal case after police discovered he had copied key fobs and repeatedly used accounts and property that weren't his. Men like Ryan always looked unpredictable on the surface, but once investigators examined the records, they found the same pattern over and over again. Amelia wasn't criminally charged, at least not at that point. However, North Star concluded that she had violated procurement policies, failed to disclose conflicts of interest, approved improper vendors, and abused her position. She lost her assignment, a portion of her deferred compensation, and the professional reputation she had spent years building. Under the divorce agreement, she also lost any claim to my house, my vehicle, my financial accounts, and any expectation that I would support Miles. She kept her personal savings, her belongings, some furniture, and the consequences of the decisions she had made. I didn't celebrate. Justice and happiness are not the same thing. Rebecca reviewed the settlement one final time. Both of us agreed to waive future claims except those specifically preserved in the agreement. Amelia also agreed to repay $28,000 in misused marital funds over the next 36 months. In return, I agreed not to pursue additional claims related to my premarital assets as part of the final settlement, without admitting that I had ever been obligated to forgive those losses. 2 months later, Victoria invited me to lunch at a small restaurant by the river. It wasn't Bolaros or anywhere filled with chandeliers and forced smiles. Just a quiet place with wooden tables, good soup, and servers who knew when to leave people alone. She arrived carrying a folder. "Business proposal," she said as she sat across from me. I was warned. By me. Fair enough. She opened the folder. Rains Meridian is launching a compliance advisory division for mid-sized contractors and military support organizations, internal controls, vendor audits, ownership transitions, fraud prevention. I want you to lead it. I looked over the first page. The salary was higher than I had ever paid myself. When I reached the equity offer, I looked up. This is generous. Victoria shook her head. No, it's value paid at the right price. I sat with those words for a moment. Value. Not tolerated. Not used. Not praised for being dependable while being slowly drained. Valued. I need time to review this. Take all the time you need. That could be dangerous. I read everything. I'm counting on it. For the first time in a long while, I smiled without any bitterness. Victoria smiled back. It didn't heal me. That wasn't her job. But it reminded me that not every open door leads to a room where someone is waiting to take something from you. I didn't fall in love with Victoria Rains because she helped expose my ex-wife's corruption. That would make for a cleaner story. Sharper. Easier to tell people who want revenge to arrive like a lightning strike. The truth was much quieter. I fell in love with her because she answered questions honestly. Because she never asked me to mistake sacrifice for love. Because when I told her I needed time, she gave it to me without making me feel guilty. Because she read every contract before signing it and expected me to do the same. The first time I had to cancel dinner because of a client emergency, she didn't accuse me of neglect. She simply had soup delivered to my office with a note that read, "Eat before you rescue the world from invoices." She laughed at dry jokes. She disliked performative charity. 6 months after my divorce, she still remembered that I only drank my coffee black during audits. I accepted the partnership. Rains Hayes Advisory opened on the 7th floor of a renovated brick factory. The same factory from the photograph hanging in Victoria's office. She had bought the building years earlier after her father lost his job there when she was a teenager. She rarely talked about it, but when she did, I understood why she valued control without worshipping it. We built the firm the same way. No flashy launch. No dramatic press release. Just careful work for organizations that wanted to find leaks before the ship started sinking. Our first major client was a family-owned construction supplier whose founder's nephew had been creating fake vendors. Our second was a veterans nonprofit with weak internal controls but no dishonest intent. Our third was a military housing contractor whose silent partner wasn't nearly as silent as he believed. I worked hard. I slept better. Some nights I still woke expecting my phone to be filled with accusations. Financial abuse. Cruelty. Abandonment. Be reasonable. Don't embarrass everyone. Be mature. Then I would remember the house was quiet because no one inside it was lying anymore. Amelia contacted me only through the required legal channels. A reimbursement payment arrived on the 1st of every month. Sometimes it came a day late, but never more than that. Through Rebecca, I heard Amelia had taken an administrative training position and moved into a small apartment near her parents, though not with them. Miles was healthy. Ryan's parental rights became entangled in his criminal case and later in his own lack of interest. I didn't follow the details. Distance isn't hatred. It's hygiene. A year after the divorce, Victoria and I attended a compliance conference in Seattle. She delivered the keynote address on building a healthy risk culture. I sat in the front row and watched an auditorium full of executives slowly realize that trust your people is not an internal control system. After the conference, we walked along the waterfront carrying paper cups of coffee. Cold wind rolled in from the water. Victoria wore a long black coat and a pair of simple silver earrings. She glanced at me. "You're quiet." "I usually am." "True." She smiled. "What are you thinking about?" I looked out across the gray water. How strange it is to build something new after spending years trying to maintain something that was already falling apart. She nodded. "Building is harder." "Yes," I said. "But it's cleaner." I looked at her. She looked back. There was no performance in her expression. No expectation that I had to prove my worth. No hidden invoice behind her affection. "Victoria," I said, "I love you." She stopped walking. For the first time since we'd met, I had genuinely surprised her. Then her expression softened. "Good," she said. That makes this a lot less awkward. I frowned. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I stared at it. Victoria. Relax, she said with a smile. I'm not getting down on one knee on a wet sidewalk. I respect both romance and healthy knees. I laughed. She opened the box. Inside was a simple platinum band. I had a speech prepared, she said. It was concise, legally sound, and emotionally appropriate. Sounds perfect. It was. She smiled. But I'll keep it simple. She took a slow breath. I want a life with you, Daniel. Not because you're safe, but because you're honest. Not because you carry everyone else's burdens without complaint, but because you know when it's time to put them down. I don't need you to rescue me, she said. And I don't want to rescue you. I want to build a life beside you. The wind drifted around us. For a moment I thought about another table, another ring, another woman who had asked me to turn betrayal into responsibility. Then I looked at Victoria and realized just how far I'd come. Yes, I said. Her eyes softened. I haven't even asked the question yet. There it is, she said with a grin. Always efficient. Instead of slipping the ring onto my finger, she placed it gently in my hand. Your choice, she said. That was the moment I truly knew. Not because of the ring, but because she gave me the choice. We got married 4 months later in the old factory building. There were no chandeliers, no donor wall, no relatives showing up hoping for a check. Mrs. Keller came wearing a blue dress and cried into a handkerchief through most of the ceremony. Rebecca attended too. She reminded me that marriage was both a legal relationship and an emotional one, then hugged me like a sister. Elaine gave a toast so dry that half the guests didn't realize she was joking until Victoria burst out laughing. Victoria wore ivory instead of white because, as she put it, she didn't care for symbolic pressure. She wore her hair down. Her vows fit neatly on one page. Mine were even shorter. We stood facing each other in a room filled with warm sunlight, exposed brick, and people who had earned the right to be there. I spent years believing love meant being the last person to leave a burning house, I said. Then I learned that love also means not starting the fire, not handing someone the gasoline, and not calling loyalty cruel when it finally walks away. A soft wave of laughter moved through the room. Victoria's eyes shone. You didn't save me, I continued. You respected me while I saved myself. You met me as I was, not as a role you needed someone to fill. I promised to build with you honestly, argue with you fairly, read every document before I sign it, and never mistake your strength for something I'm entitled to use. She quietly mouthed, Good. I nearly laughed. After the ceremony, while everyone gathered around the long reception tables, my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I ignored it. A minute later, it buzzed again. Then a third time. I stepped into a quiet hallway and looked at the screen. Unknown number. Then a text appeared. It's Amelia. I heard about the wedding. I know I have no right to say anything. I just wanted to tell you. I hope she knows how lucky she is. I stared at the message. There was a time when seeing Amelia's name would have made my chest tighten. Now it felt like finding an old receipt in the pocket of a coat. Proof that something had already been paid for, not something that was still owed. Another message arrived. I'm sorry for asking you to be his father. I finally understand what I was really asking of you. I looked back through the doorway. Victoria stood beneath the warm lights, laughing with Mrs. Keller. She looked over, found me immediately, and simply met my eyes. No suspicion, no fear, just quiet awareness. A silent question. Everything okay? I smiled, silenced my phone, and slipped it back into my pocket. Then I walked back to my wife. Later that evening, as the sun settled behind the factory windows, Rebecca caught me near the dessert table. Did you ever imagine it would end like this? No. Better or worse? I looked across the room. Victoria was debating with Elaine over whether lemon cake was better than chocolate. Cleaner, I said. Rebecca smiled. That is such a Daniel answer. Thank you. It wasn't entirely a compliment. I'll take it anyway. Across the room, Victoria raised one eyebrow at me. I walked over. She handed me a slice of lemon cake. I looked at it and laughed. "What?" she asked. "Long story. I know most of it. Not this part." "Then tell me later." I took the plate. For years, lemon cake had belonged to the night my marriage ended. Marlene's dining table. Amelia's trembling voice. Ryan wearing my sweatshirt. The request that tried to turn me from a husband into a cover story. But standing there beside Victoria, sunlight pouring through the old factory windows, a wedding ring on my finger because I had chosen it, I realized something. The people who betray you don't get permanent ownership of ordinary things. Not houses, not songs, not restaurants, not lemon cake, and not your ability to trust yourself. Amelia asked me to raise her ex-lover's child because she believed my decency was something she could keep using. Ryan mocked me because he thought being chosen by a selfish woman made him the winner. Marlene called me cruel because I stopped paying for the comfort of people who never cared about my pain. They were all wrong. Decency without boundaries isn't love. It's unpaid labor. And I was done working for people who treated my dignity like a debt. Victoria touched my arm. "You disappeared for a second." "No," I said, looking around the room we had built together. Every person there was present because they loved us or respected us, not because they expected anything in return. "I'm right here, outside." The city kept moving without asking anyone's permission. "So did I."